At a luxurious funeral, a millionaire lies in state under the gaze of a curious crowd. Suddenly, a mysterious wolf appears and leaps onto the coffin, leaving everyone in shock. The green hills surrounding the small town of Mystic Valley in rural Vermont seemed different that morning. An unusual silence hung over the cobblestone streets as residents prepared for an unprecedented event. For the first time in decades, the gates of Blackwood Manor would be opened to the public. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. Sarah Thompson, the manor's housekeeper for over 20 years, supervised the final preparations for the ceremony. Her red and swollen eyes betrayed sleepless nights as she coordinated a team of staff organizing the main hall. The red velvet curtains were drawn back, allowing sunlight to penetrate through the century-old stained glass windows, creating a colorful mosaic on the noble wooden floor. "Mrs. Thompson," called Michael, the property's oldest gardener. "The guests have started to arrive." The housekeeper nodded, adjusting her impeccable black dress. News about William Blackwood had spread quickly through town. The eccentric millionaire, known for his reclusiveness and obsession with red wolves, rarely received visitors at his property. Now, curious onlookers and acquaintances would finally have the chance to enter this almost mythical territory. Among the first to arrive was Emily Parker, William's former secretary. Her hesitant steps down the main corridor revealed the weight of memories she carried. "It's strange being here like this," she whispered to Sarah, observing the portraits on the walls. William was always so private, so protective of his privacy. The manor began to fill up. Local farmers, businessmen from neighboring towns, and even important politicians crossed the wrought iron gates. Each brought with them a different story about William Blackwood, some of admiration, others of speculation about his mysterious projects involving the Red Wolves. In the center of the main room, the solid oak coffin was positioned on a marble base. Around it, arrangements of wildflowers, William's favorites, exuded a soft perfume that mingled with the aroma of newly lit candles. On the wall behind the coffin, an immense portrait of William watched over everyone with his piercing green eyes. Dr. James Richards, lawyer and confidant of the deceased, remained close to the coffin, discreetly greeting the guests who approached. His grave countenance hid information that only he knew, secrets that William had shared during their long conversations on winter nights. "Doctor," Sarah approached, lowering her voice, "I found this in Mr. William's office this morning." She discreetly handed him a sealed envelope with the Blackwood family crest. James tucked the envelope into the inner pocket of his jacket, his eyes revealing silent understanding. William had mentioned something about special instructions, about revelations that should happen at the right time. The afternoon wore on, and with it grew the unease among those present. Some swore they had heard distant howls coming from the forest surrounding the property. Others commented on strange movements among the trees, shadows that seemed to dance in the twilight. "Do you remember his obsession with the red wolves?" an elderly lady whispered to her group. "They say he built a secret sanctuary in the forest, that he talked to them as if they were people." Sarah observed everything attentively, her heart tight not only from the loss of her employer, but from the growing feeling that something extraordinary was about to happen. She knew the secrets of the manor better than anyone, had witnessed inexplicable events over the years, but nothing had prepared her for what was to come. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, when the first signs that this would not be an ordinary ceremony began to manifest. The manor's lights flickered softly, as if responding to an invisible presence. The wind entering through the windows carried a different aroma, wild, primitive. In the forest, shadows moved. Something was approaching, something that would make this night the most extraordinary that Mystic Valley had ever witnessed. And only Sarah, in her vigilant silence, seemed to understand that the true mystery of William Blackwood was just beginning to reveal itself. The silence that reigned in the main hall of Blackwood Manor was broken by a subtle sound, almost imperceptible, a delicate scratching on the noble wood of the main door. The guests, until then absorbed in their whispered conversations, turned their attention to the entrance of the hall. Sarah, who was supervising the last details of the ceremony, felt a shiver run down her spine. In her long years of service at the manor, she had learned to recognize the peculiar signs that always surrounded the property. This, however, was different. Dr. James Richards, who until then had maintained a formal posture near the coffin, instinctively brought his hand to his jacket pocket, where he kept the mysterious envelope that Sarah had given him. His eyes fixed on the door with a mixture of expectation and apprehension. It was then that he appeared. Majestic, with his golden fur gleaming under the light of the candelabras, a red wolf entered the hall. It showed no sign of aggression or fear. On the contrary, its movements were deliberate, almost ceremonial. The animal moved with a dignity that paralyzed all those present. "My God in heaven!" exclaimed Emily, bringing her hands to her mouth. As William's secretary, she knew of her employer's obsession with these animals, but she had never imagined witnessing a scene like this. The guests, divided between fear and fascination, instinctively made way. Some moved closer to the walls, others remained motionless as if hypnotized by the animal's presence. The red wolf, oblivious to the commotion it was causing, continued its determined path towards the center of the room. "It's him," Sarah whispered to herself, recognizing the animal from the countless nights she had seen it near the manor, always watching, always present, like a silent guardian. Dr. James observed the scene with particular interest. His conversations with William over the years had revealed fragments of a larger story, of a deep connection between the millionaire and these animals that went beyond simple conservation. Now, witnessing this extraordinary moment, the pieces of the puzzle were beginning to fit together. With surprising elegance, the red wolf approached the coffin. In a gesture that left everyone speechless, it rested its front paws on the side of the furniture, inclining its head in a pose that seemed reverential. Its amber eyes, deep and mysterious, fixed on William's portrait for long moments. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the distant sound of wind in the forest trees. The candles flickered slightly, creating dancing shadows on the walls. Time seemed to have stopped, as if that moment was suspended between reality and something else, something that transcended common understanding. Michael, the gardener, approached Sarah discreetly. "Ma'am," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "In all these years tending the gardens, I've never seen anything like this. It's as if he knew exactly why he's here," Sarah completed, her voice choked. She remembered the numerous times she had found William talking alone in the manor's gardens, apparently to no one. Now, witnessing this extraordinary scene, she began to question if he had really been alone all those times. The manor's lights flickered again, this time more intensely. The red wolf remained motionless, its presence commanding an involuntary reverence from all present. It was then that something even more extraordinary happened. The lights failed completely, plunging the hall into momentary darkness. When the illumination returned, seconds later, the atmosphere had changed. The air seemed denser, charged with an inexplicable energy. And there, still in its solemn position next to the coffin, the red wolf raised its head and emitted a howl, not a wild or threatening sound, but something deeply melancholic, almost musical. The howl reverberated through the manor, echoing through corridors and halls, touching something deep in the soul of each person present. Some swore they saw tears in the animal's eyes. Others claimed that for a brief moment, a golden light seemed to envelop its figure. Dr. James, feeling the weight of the envelope in his pocket, knew that this moment was just the beginning. The secrets of William Blackwood, his connection with the Red Wolves, and the true purpose of his sanctuary were yet to be revealed, and something told him that this majestic animal would be fundamental to unraveling these mysteries. The Red Wolf's howl still echoed in the hearts of those present when Anthony, the manor's oldest employee, stepped forward. His trembling hands held a yellowed envelope that until then he had kept hidden. The man's countenance revealed a mixture of emotion and responsibility. "Ladies and gentlemen," his hoarse voice broke the silence that followed the animal's howl, "Mr. William left specific instructions for this moment. He knew this would happen." Dr. James exchanged a significant look with Sarah, while the Red Wolf remained impassive beside the coffin, as if waiting for the appropriate moment. The guests, still impacted by the extraordinary scene they had just witnessed, drew closer to listen. For years, Anthony continued, many speculated about Mr. William's obsession with the Red Wolves. Some said it was madness, others that it was just the eccentricity of a rich man. But there was much more behind it. Emily, the former secretary, nodded slightly. How many times had she witnessed her employer, in long conversations with these animals on full moon nights. How many times had she found him in the office, bent over ancient manuscripts that spoke of an ancestral connection between his family and the guardians of the forest. Anthony carefully opened the envelope, removing an old document from inside. This is a story that goes back to the founding of this town, when the first Blackwood arrived in these lands. It was a difficult period of many trials, until something extraordinary happened. The manor's lights flickered again, as if responding to the narrative. The red wolf slightly moved its ears, attentive to every word. The temperature of the environment seemed to have dropped, and a wild perfume reminiscent of the forest that surrounded the property invaded the hall. Mr. William's great-grandfather was lost in the forest, near starvation, when he was saved by a group of red wolves. They guided him to a spring of crystal-clear water and protected him during the night. On that occasion, he made a vow. His family would always protect those animals and their lands. Sarah noticed that some people in the room let out exclamations of surprise. Dr. James removed the envelope he had been keeping in his pocket, realizing that the moment had come to reveal its contents. The sanctuary that Mr. William built, Anthony continued, was not just a place of preservation. It was the fulfillment of an ancestral promise, a sacred pact between the Blackwoods and these noble animals. And this red wolf we see here. At this moment, the animal turned its amber eyes to Anthony, as if authorizing him to continue. The employee swallowed hard before proceeding. This is the same red wolf that appeared to Mr. William every full moon night, the same one he called the Guardian. In his words, this animal was not just a protector of the forest, but a messenger between two worlds, a being that understood secrets that we humans have long forgotten. Dr. James finally opened his envelope, revealing old photographs that showed William alongside a red wolf, the same one that was now present in the room. The dates on the photos, spanning decades, defied any logical explanation. Mr. William knew this moment would come, Anthony continued, his voice choked with emotion. He left instructions, documents, revelations that would help us understand the true meaning of his mission. But more than that, he wanted everyone to know that his departure would not mean the end of this extraordinary story. A distant thunder reverberated through the property, and the red wolf finally moved. With the same dignity with which it had entered, it began to walk towards the exit. Before leaving, however, it turned one last time to those present, its eyes shining with an ancient and mysterious wisdom. At that moment, everyone understood that they were witnessing not just a moment of farewell, but the beginning of something much greater. The secrets of Blackwood Manor, the connection between the family and the red wolves, and the true purpose of the sanctuary were beginning to be revealed, promising developments that no one could have foreseen. Dr. James Richards spread the old photographs on the mahogany desk in William's office. The closest guests, including Sarah, Emily, and Anthony, carefully observed each image that documented the extraordinary connection between the millionaire and the mysterious red wolf. These photos were taken over 40 years, explained the lawyer, pointing to the dates carefully noted on the back of each one. The most intriguing thing is that the animal looks exactly the same in all of them, without any sign of aging. Emily picked up one of the photographs with trembling hands. It was from 1983, showing a young William next to the red wolf in the manor's gardens. "I remember this day," she whispered. "It was when Mr. William started talking about building the sanctuary." Sarah opened one of the drawers of the desk and pulled out a leather-bound diary. "I found this morning," she said, placing the volume on the table. "These are Mr. William's personal notes about his experiences in the sanctuary." The group gathered around as Dr. James reverently opened the diary. The yellowed pages revealed an elegant and precise handwriting, typical of William. He began to read aloud, July 15th, 1980. "Today I understood that my role goes far beyond the simple preservation of these noble animals. The Guardian showed me visions of the ancient forest, of a time when men and red wolves walked together as equals. There is an ancestral wisdom in their eyes, a connection to something much greater than we can imagine." A distant thunder made the windows tremble. Rain began to fall softly on the manor's gardens, creating a silver curtain that further isolated the group from the outside world. "Continue," Anthony urged, his voice barely disguising his anxiety. "September 20th, 1995, James continued. "The sanctuary is almost complete. It's not just a refuge for the red wolves, but a portal between two worlds. The Guardian showed me that there are places in the forest where the veil between realities is thinner. It's there that our true mission must be fulfilled. Emily gasped as she recognized the date. It was around this time that Mr. William started spending entire nights in the sanctuary. Many thought he had lost his mind, but now... Sarah flipped through a few more pages of the diary until she found a more recent entry. The words written there made her heart race. April 10th, 2024. The time is approaching. The Guardian showed me that my journey on this plane is coming to an end, but the work we started must continue. I have carefully chosen those who will carry this legacy forward. The sanctuary cannot be just a place of preservation. It is a meeting point between the mystical and the earthly, between the ancestral past and the future yet to come. A deep silence fell over the office. Through the window they could see the forest surrounding the property, its century-old trees dancing with the storm wind. Somewhere, among those green shadows, was the sanctuary that William had built, guarding secrets that were only beginning to be revealed. "There's more," said James, removing a sealed envelope from inside the diary. "These are specific instructions for each of us." William knew this moment would come, and he prepared everything meticulously. Before he could open the envelope, a distant howl echoed through the property. Everyone turned to the window, where the silhouette of the red wolf could be seen against the stormy sky, its majestic figure outlined by occasional lightning. "It's calling us," Sarah murmured, her voice laden with understanding. "It's time for us to know the sanctuary. It's time for us to truly understand the legacy that Mr. William left us." The rain had diminished to a fine drizzle when the small group left the manor. Sarah led the way, followed by Dr. James, Emily, and Anthony. The sky, still heavy with dark clouds, was occasionally illuminated by distant lightning, revealing the sinuous contour of the trail that extended towards the forest. Mr. William always said that the path to the sanctuary only revealed itself to those who were called, Sarah commented, adjusting the shawl over her shoulders. The temperature had dropped considerably, and a soft mist was beginning to form between the trees. Emily held William's diary tightly against her chest. In the last weeks, he spent hours writing in this diary. Whenever I entered the office, he would close it quickly, as if guarding secrets too precious to be shared before the right time. The trail wound through the forest, becoming increasingly narrow. Ancient trees rose majestically around them, their dense canopies forming a natural dome that filtered the little remaining light of the day. The smell of wet earth and vegetation mixed with a different aroma, something primitive and mysterious. "Look," exclaimed Anthony, pointing to a rocky formation ahead. Carved into the stone, almost invisible under a layer of moss, was a symbol, the stylized silhouette of a red wolf, surrounded by ancient inscriptions. Dr. James approached, running his fingers over the marks in the rock. "This seems to be hundreds of years old," he murmured, fascinated. William mentioned in our conversations that the first Blackwoods were not the only ones to recognize the special significance of this place. A branch cracked in the forest, making everyone turn. There, partially hidden among the shadows, was the red wolf. Its amber eyes shone with a supernatural intensity, fixed on the group as if assessing each of them. "It's the Guardian," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "It's going to show us the way." As if responding to her words, the animal began to move, choosing a trail that none of them had noticed before. The group followed it in silence, aware that they were about to witness something extraordinary. The vegetation around them began to change subtly. Wild flowers of unknown species appeared between the trees, their petals emanating a soft glow in the twilight. The air grew denser with each step, charged with an ancient and mysterious energy. "Mr. William's notes speak of this place," said Emily, quickly consulting the diary. "He called it the Valley of the Guardians. According to his words, it's a place where the barriers between worlds become thinner." After a bend in the path, the group stopped, amazed. Before them opened a natural clearing, perfectly circular, surrounded by centuries-old trees whose trunks seemed impossibly intertwined. In the center, an ancient structure rose, partially covered by flowering vines. "The sanctuary," murmured Dr. James, his eyes wide with admiration. The red wolf had stopped near the entrance of the structure. Its golden fur seemed to emit its own glow in the diffuse light, and its eyes conveyed an ancient wisdom that transcended human understanding. Sarah stepped forward, feeling the weight of the responsibility William had entrusted to them. "This is where all the answers lie," she said, her voice firm despite the emotion. "This is where we'll discover the true purpose of everything Mr. William built." The group approached the entrance of the sanctuary, guided by the Guardian. What would they find beyond those ancient walls? What secrets had William protected for so long? The answers were about to be revealed, and with them a deeper understanding of the extraordinary connection between the Blackwoods and the mysterious Red Wolves. As they crossed the entrance of the sanctuary, the group was enveloped by a completely different atmosphere. The air inside was denser, filled with aromas of ancient herbs and an almost palpable energy. Natural crystals sprouted from the stone walls, emitting a soft glow that illuminated the environment with bluish tones. "Incredible," murmured Dr. James, observing the carvings on the walls. They were ancient drawings, depicting humans and red wolves in different scenes. Some seemed to tell stories of cooperation, others showed mysterious rituals under full moons. The Guardian moved with familiarity through the space, its silent steps echoing slightly on the polished stone floor. In the center of the sanctuary, a circular stone table rose, its surface covered with symbols that seemed to glow under the light of the crystals. "Look at this," called Emily, approaching a series of shelves carved into the rock. On them, dozens of ancient books and carefully preserved scrolls were organized. "These are the records of the Blackwood family. Some seem to be hundreds of years old." Sarah approached a pedestal near the central table. On it, a particularly old book lay open, its yellowed pages protected by a glass dome. "This is Mr. William's handwriting," she said, instantly recognizing the elegant script. "It's the diary of the first Blackwood," explained Anthony, his voice reverent. "Mr. William showed it to me once. This is where the story really begins." Dr. James began to read aloud. 1823. "Today I understood that my survival in the forest was not a matter of chance. The red wolves that saved me are much more than simple animals. They are guardians of an ancestral knowledge, of a wisdom that our modern world has forgotten. We made a pact. They showed me the secrets of the earth, and in exchange our family committed to protect this sacred place forever." The Guardian approached the central table, its amber eyes fixed on a specific point. Sarah followed its gaze and noticed a small recess in the stone, perfectly circular. "The medallion!" she exclaimed, suddenly remembering. Mr. William always wore an ancient medallion. He never took it off. Emily quickly opened the diary she was holding, flipping to the last pages. "Here," he wrote about it. "The medallion is the key. When the time comes, it must return to its place of origin, in the heart of the sanctuary. Only then will the circle be complete." As if responding to a silent call, the Guardian emitted a soft, almost musical sound. From the corridor leading to the interior of the sanctuary, other red wolves began to emerge, their eyes shining with the same ancient wisdom as their leader. "They were here all along," whispered Sarah, amazed. "This place, it's much more than just a refuge." Dr. James took something from his jacket pocket, a golden medallion, ornamented with symbols identical to those on the stone table. "William gave this to me the last time we met," he revealed. "He said I would know the right moment to use it." The group watched in silence as James approached the central table. The medallion in his hands seemed to pulse with its own light, responding to the energy of the place. Carefully, he positioned it in the recess in the stone. The sound that followed was like ancient music, vibrating through the walls of the sanctuary. The crystals in the walls intensified their glow, and the symbols on the table began to emit a golden light, similar to the Guardian's coat. "Mr. William knew this moment would come," said Sarah, her voice choked with emotion. "He prepared everything, every detail, so that we could continue his legacy." The Guardian moved to the center of the circle formed by the other red wolves, its eyes fixed on the group of humans. It was as if, at that moment, the barriers between worlds had truly dissolved, revealing a greater truth than any of them could have imagined. As soon as the medallion was fitted into the stone table, a subtle transformation began to occur in the sanctuary. The symbols carved into the walls seemed to come to life, glowing with a golden light that resembled the Guardian's fur. The air became even denser, charged with an ancient and powerful energy. Emily opened William's diary once more, her hands trembling slightly. "There's something here," she said, finding a page marked with a symbol similar to that of the medallion. It's a kind of prophecy, or rather, a commitment. "The hour approaches," she read aloud, "when the circle will need to be renewed. The pact between the guardians and the keepers must continue. The sanctuary is not just a refuge, it is a point of balance, a place where ancient wisdom is kept alive through the ages." The guardian, still in the center of the circle formed by the other red wolves, emitted a soft sound that reverberated through the walls of the sanctuary. The crystals in the walls pulsed in response, creating a spectacle of lights that left everyone in awe. "Look!" exclaimed Anthony, pointing to the central table. The medallion had begun to rotate slowly, as if moved by an invisible force. With each turn, new symbols appeared on the surface of the stone, shining as if they had been written with liquid light. Sarah approached, her eyes wide with recognition. "These are the same symbols that Mr. William used to draw in his notebook every full moon night. He said they were messages from the guardians, but he never revealed their full meaning." "Doctor." James took an envelope from his jacket, the last one William had given him. "Perhaps now is the time," he said, breaking the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered with the millionaire's elegant handwriting. "To the chosen ones who find this sanctuary. What you witness now is more than a simple succession of events. It is the awakening of a mission that transcends generations. The red wolves are not just animals to be protected. They are guardians of an ancestral knowledge, of a wisdom that the modern world has forgotten. The sanctuary is a portal, a meeting point between two worlds. Through it, ancient wisdom continues to flow, maintaining the balance that our ancestors worked so hard to preserve. Each red wolf you see here is a guardian of this knowledge, and the guardian, the one you know, is the strongest link between our worlds. The true mission of the Blackwood family was never just to accumulate wealth or power. Our fortune exists only to ensure the protection of this sacred place and the continuation of this ancestral legacy. Now, it's up to you, the chosen ones, to continue this mission." A distant thunder echoed through the forest, and the red wolves moved in sync, forming a wider circle around the central table. The guardian fixed its amber eyes on each of those present, as if evaluating them. "Mr. William always said that nothing happens by chance," murmured Sarah, finally understanding. "Each of us is here for a specific reason. He chose us not just to preserve this place, but to keep alive the connection between worlds." Emily found another note in the diary. "The true power of the sanctuary is not in its walls or its symbols, but in the union between those who understand its importance. The guardians show the way, but it is human hearts that must choose to follow it." The group observed in silence as the medallion continued its hypnotic spin, revealing more and more ancestral symbols. It was as if each rotation brought to light a new layer of understanding, a deeper comprehension of the true purpose of this sacred place. The silence in the sanctuary was broken by the sound of pages being turned. Emily had found another section of the diary, marked with the same symbol as the medallion that was still spinning on the stone table. "There's something here about each of us," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Mr. William left specific instructions, as if he knew exactly who would be here at this moment." The guardian approached Sarah first, its amber eyes fixed on hers with an intensity that made the housekeeper hold her breath. Emily began to read, "Sarah, my faithful housekeeper and friend, your connection to the manor goes beyond duty. You've always felt the special energy of this place, always understood that there was something more behind the ancient walls and mysterious gardens. To you I entrust the guardianship of the manor and its transformation into a center for studies on red wolves. The doors that once remained closed must now open to those who seek knowledge." The red wolf then moved towards Anthony, who remained close to the shelves of ancient books. Emily continued, "Anthony, you who grew up on these lands and know every trail, every secret of the forest, your simplicity hides a natural wisdom, a deep understanding of nature's cycles. You will be the guardian of the trails, the protector of the paths that lead to the sanctuary. Your mission is to ensure that only true seekers find this sacred place." The guardian turned to Dr. James, who still held the empty envelope in his hands. Emily's voice gained strength as she read, "James, my friend and advisor, your legal mind has always sought logical explanations, but your heart has always known that there are truths that transcend reason. To you, I entrust the legal part of our legacy. Transform the Blackwood fortune into a foundation dedicated to the preservation not only of red wolves, but of all the ancestral wisdom they represent." Finally, the Guardian stopped in front of Emily, who continued reading with tears in her eyes. "Emily, my dedicated secretary, you who organized my papers, kept my secrets, and understood my eccentricities, your mission is to be the chronicler, the keeper of stories. All records, all diaries, all future discoveries will pass through your hands. Keep the memory alive so that future generations can understand the importance of what we do here." The crystals in the walls pulsed more intensely, and the medallion on the central table finally stopped spinning. The symbols it had revealed now formed a complex pattern that extended across the entire surface of the stone. "It's no coincidence that we're here," said Sarah, her voice firm. "Mr. William prepared us for years, even though we didn't know it. Every conversation, every shared moment, every seemingly simple task, it was training," completed Dr. James, understanding. "He was preparing us for this moment, for this responsibility." The Guardian emitted a soft, almost musical sound, and the other red wolves responded in unison, creating a harmony that made the crystals vibrate in resonance. It was as if the forest itself was celebrating that moment of understanding and acceptance. "There's one more thing," said Emily, turning the last page. "A final message. The true power of the sanctuary lies in the union between worlds. Each of you represents a part of this whole, a different facet of the same mission. Together you will keep alive not only the legacy of the Blackwoods, but the ancient alliance between humans and Guardians. The circle continues. Knowledge endures and ancestral wisdom finds new Guardians in each generation." Dawn was beginning to tint the sky when the group finally emerged from the sanctuary. The forest seemed different now, more alive, more aware. The Guardian and the other red wolves accompanied them, moving silently among the trees like golden shadows. "We need to return to the manor," said Sarah, her countenance transformed by a new determination. "The guests are still there, and we have to start our mission immediately." Dr. James consulted his watch, surprised to realize how much time they had spent in the sanctuary. "It's amazing how time seemed to flow differently in there," he commented. "But Sarah is right. We have a lot of work ahead of us." As they walked back, Emily was already making notes in her notebook. "We need to catalogue all the books in the sanctuary, create a registration system for new discoveries. Mr. William left decades of research and observations that need to be organized. And the trails need to be mapped," added Anthony, observing the path with new eyes. "Some must remain hidden. Others can be open to selected researchers. We need to find the balance between preservation and sharing of knowledge." When they arrived at the manor, they found the guests still gathered, many speculating about the group's temporary disappearance. Sarah took the lead, her clear and confident voice echoing through the main hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor that we announce the continuation of Mr. William Blackwood's work. The manor will be transformed into a center for studies and preservation, dedicated not only to red wolves, but to all the wisdom they represent." Dr. James stepped forward, adding, "A foundation will be established to ensure the continuity of this work. The Blackwood legacy will live on through research, conservation, and education." The guests watched, some with surprise, others with admiration, as the group presented the first outlines of their mission. Outside the manor's large windows, the Guardian watched attentively, its amber eyes shining with approval. Emily opened her new diary, beginning the records of that historic moment. Her words flowed with ease, as if guided by an ancient inspiration. "Today marks the beginning of a new era in Mystic Valley. The work that Mr. Williams started was not just about preservation, it was about reconnection, about awakening an ancestral wisdom that the modern world has forgotten." Anthony approached one of the windows, observing the sunrise over the forest. "The paths are opening," he said, his voice calm. "I can feel the change in the air, in the earth itself. It's as if the forest is awakening." Sarah scanned the room with her eyes, already visualizing the necessary transformations. The manor's old rooms would become spaces for study and research. The silent corridors would give way to animated discussions about conservation and traditional knowledge. "Mr. William always said that every ending is just a new beginning," she reflected, a soft smile on her lips. "Now I completely understand what he meant. In the garden, The first rays of sunlight created golden patterns on the dewy vegetation. The Guardian and its group moved among the shadows, their presence a constant reminder of the mission that had just begun. It was the beginning of a new era in Mystic Valley, where ancient wisdom and new knowledge would intertwine to create something extraordinary. In the weeks that followed, Blackwood Manor gained a new life. The once silent corridors now echoed with the sound of determined footsteps and animated conversations. Sarah had transformed the old library into a research center, where ancient maps and historical documents were beginning to reveal their secrets. "Look at this," called Emily on a particularly busy afternoon. She was bent over one of William's oldest diaries, her careful hands turning the yellowed pages. "I found records of other similar sanctuaries in different parts of the country. Apparently we're not alone in this mission." Dr. James approached, adjusting his glasses to examine the document. "Interesting. According to these notes, there's a network of sacred places, all connected to the Red Wolves. Mr. William mapped several of them over the years." Anthony entered the library, bringing with him the aroma of the forest. His daily walks through the territory had revealed new paths and signs that had previously gone unnoticed. "The woods are different," he reported, unrolling a hand-drawn map on the central table. "It's as if they're awakening. I found ancient marks on century-old trees, all pointing to specific directions." Sarah observed the movement through the library window. The Guardian had become a constant presence in the manor's gardens, always vigilant, always observing. Other red wolves were also beginning to be seen more frequently, as if they knew it was safe to approach. "The most fascinating thing," continued Emily, "are these references to an ancient ritual that took place on full moon nights. Mr. William describes meetings between the Guardians and the Keepers, where knowledge was shared through a kind of mystical communion." Dr. James consulted the calendar on the wall. "The next full moon will be in 3 days," he observed, thoughtful. "Perhaps it's our opportunity to better understand these rituals." The soft sound of paws on the floorboards caught everyone's attention. The Guardian had entered the library, its amber eyes fixed on the group with a familiar intensity. At its side, to everyone's surprise, walked a red wolf pup. "This is extraordinary," whispered Sarah. "The pups rarely approach humans." The pup moved curiously around the environment, sniffing the old books and observing those present with bright and attentive eyes. The Guardian remained close, as if introducing the new family member to the new protectors of the sanctuary. Emily quickly made notes in her modern diary. First appearance of a pup on the mansion grounds. "The Guardian seems to be showing us that trust between the species is strengthening." "There's one more thing," said Anthony, pulling something from his shirt pocket. It was a small crystal, similar to those that illuminated the sanctuary. "I found this near one of the ancient trails. When sunlight hits it at a certain angle, it projects symbols on the ground, the same ones we saw on the stone table." The group gathered around the crystal, marveling at the discovery. It was another piece of the great puzzle they were beginning to put together, more evidence of the complexity and depth of the legacy they had inherited. "Mr. William always said that each discovery would lead us to new mysteries," reflected Sarah, a soft smile on her lips. "Now I understand that this is the true nature of our mission, not just to preserve what we already know, but to continue exploring, learning, and growing with each new revelation." The 3 days leading up to the full moon were filled with intense preparation. Emily had found specific instructions in William's diaries about how the ritual should be conducted, and the group dedicated themselves to understanding every detail with meticulous attention. "According to these notes," she explained, gathered with the others in the mansion's library, "the ritual needs to happen exactly at midnight, when the moon is at its highest point in the sky. Mr. William mentions that it's the moment when the connection between worlds becomes strongest." Sarah supervised the preparation of special herbs, following ancient recipes found in the manuscripts. The sweet and wild aroma spread through the mansion, creating an almost mystical atmosphere. "These herbs," she explained, "were used by the first Blackwoods to increase sensitivity during encounters with the Guardians." Anthony spent more and more time on the trails leading to the sanctuary, marking the path with small crystals found in the forest. The Guardian constantly accompanied him, as if approving his actions and occasionally guiding him to important discoveries. "It's fascinating," commented Dr. James, examining one of the crystals. "When properly aligned, they form a kind of luminous path under the moonlight. Mr. William developed a complex navigation system based on ancestral knowledge. On the eve of the full moon, an unusual phenomenon began to occur. Red wolves from different regions began to approach the property. They moved silently through the gardens, their eyes shining with an ancient intelligence. The pup they had met days before played among them, completely at ease. "It's as if they're gathering for something important," observed Sarah, looking out the office window. Mr. William mentioned in his records that the great gatherings always attracted guardians from distant places. Emily found another significant note. The full moon rituals are not just ceremonies. They are moments of knowledge transfer. The guardians share their wisdom through visions and sensations that transcend common communication. When night finally fell, the sky was exceptionally clear. The full moon rose majestically over the forest, bathing everything in its silvery light. The crystals positioned by Anthony began to glow, creating a luminous path that wound between the trees to the sanctuary. "It's time," announced Sarah, her serene face reflecting the moonlight. "Mr. William prepared us for this moment, even if we didn't know it at the time." The group began their walk towards the sanctuary, following the path of glowing crystals. The red wolves accompanied them, moving like golden shadows under the moonlight. The guardian led the procession, its presence more imposing than ever. As they approached the sanctuary, they realized that the place had transformed. The crystals in the walls pulsed with their own light, and the ancient symbols seemed to dance on the stone surface. The medallion on the central table emitted a soft glow, as if responding to the energy of the full moon. "Mr. William wrote about this moment," whispered Emily, consulting her notes one last time. "He said that on the first full moon, after the passing of the human guardian, the new chosen ones would receive the true initiation. It's when the ancestral wisdom would be truly shared." As midnight approached, the air inside the sanctuary became denser, charged with an ancestral energy that made the crystals in the walls vibrate at a harmonic frequency. The red wolves had formed a perfect circle around the central table, their eyes shining like liquid amber under the moonlight that entered through an opening in the ceiling. Sarah, Emily, Dr. James and Anthony took their places around the stone table, guided by a deep intuition that seemed to come from the place itself. The medallion in the center began to spin again, this time on its own, emitting a golden glow that intensified with each moment. "The diaries mention this moment," whispered Emily, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "Mr. William called it the communion of worlds." The guardian approached the table, its movements fluid and precise. With a gentle touch of its paw on the medallion, the object stopped spinning. At that instant, all the crystals in the sanctuary pulsed in unison, creating a spectacle of light that left the group in awe. Then the visions began. Sarah found herself transported through time, witnessing the moment when the first Blackwood encountered the red wolves. It wasn't just a story of survival, it was the beginning of a sacred alliance, a commitment between two species to preserve something greater than both. Anthony experienced the forest through the eyes of the guardians, finally understanding the complex network of trails and signs they used to communicate. Each tree, each stone, each stream was part of an ancient system of navigation and protection. Dr. James received visions of other sanctuaries scattered across the country, connected by invisible lines of energy that the red wolves had known and protected for generations. He understood that his legal mission was just part of a much larger plan of preservation. Emily found herself immersed in a stream of ancestral knowledge, stories and secrets passed down from generation to generation, not through written words, but through an older and deeper language, the language of the earth, of the elements, of life itself. The red wolf pup, who had been observing everything with curiosity, approached the center of the circle. Its young fur glowed with its own light, and its eyes conveyed a wisdom that seemed impossible for its age. "It's a sign," murmured Sarah, her voice distant as if speaking from another plane. The cycle continues. New guardians emerge while others take their place in the great circle of life. The other red wolves began to emit a harmonious, almost musical sound that made the crystals resonate at different frequencies. It was an ancient song, a call that crossed the barriers of time and space. "Mr. William wrote about this chant," said Emily, her words interspersed with emotion. "He called it the Song of the Guardians. He said it was a way of transmitting knowledge that couldn't be translated into human words. As the ritual progressed, each member of the group felt a profound transformation happening within them. It wasn't just a mental understanding of the mysteries they had inherited. It was a fundamental change in their way of seeing and feeling the world. The guardian moved among them, gently touching each one with its muzzle. With each touch, new understandings unfolded, new levels of consciousness opened. It was as if they were being initiated into a tradition as old as the earth itself. The days that followed the ritual were of profound transformation for the four guardians. The Blackwood Manor, which already seemed alive before, now pulsed with an energy that everyone could clearly feel. Each room, each object, seemed to tell a different story, revealing secrets that had previously gone unnoticed. Sarah discovered that she could sense the presence of the red wolves even when she couldn't see them. It was as if she had developed a new sense, an expanded consciousness that surpassed the limits of common perception. Her tasks in the mansion gained a deeper meaning. Each decision about the transformation of the space was guided by an intuitive wisdom that she now understood. "It's incredible," she commented during a morning meeting in the library. "It's as if the mansion has always been a living being, breathing, communicating. Now I can finally understand its language." Emily had developed a special connection with the ancient records. Her hands seemed to be guided when touching the books, finding exactly the pages that contained the necessary information. The symbols that had previously seemed mysterious now revealed themselves clearly in her mind. "Mr. William's diaries," she explained, leafing through a particularly old volume, "are not just historical records. They're maps of consciousness, guides to navigate between different levels of understanding. Each word has multiple layers of meaning." Anthony, in turn, had become practically an extension of the forest. His daily walks revealed new aspects of the territory, subtle connections between different points of the sanctuary that formed a complex network of energy. "The crystals we found," he said, depositing more specimens on the library table, "are like nodes in a giant web. Each one resonates with a specific frequency, creating paths of light that only the guardians can fully see." Dr. James discovered that his analytical lawyer's mind had expanded to encompass a deeper form of understanding. The legal documents he was preparing for the foundation seemed to write themselves, incorporating subtle layers of protection that went beyond the written words. "It's as if each legal clause were an enchantment," he reflected, "an agreement that resonates not only in the world of men, but also in the realm of the guardians." The red wolf pup had become a constant presence in the mansion, especially during group meetings. Its behavior demonstrated an understanding that went beyond its apparent age, as if it were a special link between the two worlds. "Mr. William mentioned something about this," said Emily, consulting her most recent notes. "He believed that some red wolves are born with a specific mission. They are teachers, guides for the new generations of both species. One day, while organizing the library according to their new understanding, they found a secret compartment behind one of the shelves. Inside was an ancient map, unlike anything they had ever seen. It didn't just show physical places, but energetic connections, power points, and invisible paths that the red wolves used to communicate across great distances." "This changes everything," Sarah murmured, her eyes shining with understanding. "We're not just protecting a sanctuary, we're guarding one of the most important nodes of a network that covers the entire country." The guardian, who was observing everything from the library entrance, emitted a soft sound of approval. Its amber eyes conveyed a glow of satisfaction, as if each new discovery by the group was a step towards a greater goal that only it could fully see. The discovery of the ancient map triggered a series of events that no one could have predicted. On a particularly significant morning, the group received an unexpected visit. A young researcher named Claire Adams arrived at the mansion, bringing with her a medallion identical to the one resting in the sanctuary. "I come from the sanctuary in the Adirondack Mountains," she explained, her eyes shining with the same type of understanding that the group had acquired. "The guardians guided me here. They said it was time for the circles to connect again." Sarah and the others exchanged significant looks. The guardian, who was present at the moment of Claire's arrival, moved close to her with surprising familiarity, as if it already knew her. "On the map," said Emily, spreading the ancient document on the table, The Adirondacks appear as one of the main points of the network. Mr. William had marked a special connection between the two sanctuaries. Claire nodded, taking from her bag a diary very similar to William's. Our guardian, Mrs. Evelyn, maintained contact with Mr. William over the years. They knew that one day the paths would cross again. Anthony, who had spent the last few weeks mapping the energy trails, noticed something remarkable. The crystals we found, they form a direct line to the Adirondacks. It's as if they were markers on an ancestral path. Dr. James examined the medallion brought by Claire. It was identical to theirs in shape, but the engraved symbols told a different story. Each sanctuary has its own mark, Claire explained, but together they form a larger pattern, a complete language. The red wolf pup, which had become a constant presence in the mansion, showed a special interest in Claire. It approached her with deliberate curiosity, as if recognizing in her an important piece of the puzzle they were putting together. "He's special," commented Claire, gently petting the pup. "In our sanctuary, we have stories about red wolves that are born with a specific mission. They're like ambassadors between the different circles of guardians." Emily found in her recent notes a reference that was beginning to make sense. Mr. William wrote about a time when all the sanctuaries would be connected again, when the ancient network would be restored in its entirety. Sarah, observing the gathered group, felt a familiar energy course through the environment. It was as if the mansion itself was responding to Claire's presence, recognizing the beginning of a new phase in its history. "It's no coincidence that you arrived now," said Sarah. "Since the full moon ritual, we've felt that our mission is greater than we initially imagined. There are other guardians out there, other circles that need to be reconnected." The guardian, who was observing everything with its wise eyes, emitted a soft sound that everyone now recognized as approval. It was as if each new development was part of a larger plan, a complex design that was gradually revealing itself. Claire smiled, a smile that carried the weight of ancestral knowledge. The red wolves have always known this moment would come. They are the true guardians of the web, the keepers of a tradition that has existed since before cities, before borders. In the mansion's library, now transformed into a center for studies and research, Claire shared with the group the knowledge guarded in the Adirondack Sanctuary. Ancient maps and new documents covered the large central table, revealing a web of connections that extended throughout the American territory. "In our sanctuary," Claire explained, pointing to a series of symbols in her diary, Mrs. Evelyn discovered that the red wolves maintain a form of communication that transcends physical distances. They can transmit messages through what she called lines of light, energetic connections that link all the sacred points. Emily, who had spent the morning correlating information from the two sanctuaries, made a surprising discovery. "Look at this! The symbols on our crystals perfectly complement the records from the Adirondack Sanctuary. It's as if they were two parts of a larger message." The guardian, who was attentively following the meeting, approached the table. Its amber eyes fixed on a specific point on the map where several lines intersected. The pup, always close, imitated its gesture, as if learning to read that ancient language. "It's incredible," commented Sarah, observing the interaction. "Mr. William always said that the pups are trained from an early age to understand their mission. Now we're seeing it happening before our eyes." Dr. James, who had spent the last few days in contact with environmental authorities, brought encouraging news. "The Blackwood Foundation has been officially recognized. Now we have legal backing to establish a protection network that goes far beyond the physical preservation of red wolves." Anthony entered the library, bringing more discoveries from the trails. "The crystals are more active since Claire arrived. It's as if the presence of someone from another sanctuary had awakened something in the energy lines. I found new paths that seem to lead to other points of the network." Claire opened a particularly old document on the table, its yellowed pages covered with delicate writing. "These are Mrs. Evelyn's oldest records. She speaks of a prophecy, a time when all sanctuaries would reconnect, restoring an ancestral balance that was lost." The group observed in silence as the guardian moved around the table, its deliberate steps seeming to draw an invisible pattern on the floor. The pup followed it, learning each movement, each pause, as if this were an important lesson. "The prophecy," continued Claire, her voice soft but firm, "speaks of a moment of awakening, when human guardians and red wolves would work together again, as in ancient times, not just to protect the forests and animals, but to restore a form of wisdom that the modern world has forgotten. Emily found in her notes a passage that seemed to connect with this revelation. Mr. William wrote about this too. He believed that the sanctuaries were not just refuges, but anchoring points for a special kind of knowledge, one that can't be written in books or taught in schools. A distant thunder reverberated across the property, and the crystals in the gardens began to pulse with a soft light. It was as if the earth itself was responding to the revelations being shared, confirming the importance of this moment of reconnection. News of the connection between the sanctuaries spread quickly through the ancient network of guardians. In a few days, Blackwood Manor began to receive messages and visitors from other parts of the country. Each brought with them a piece of the puzzle that was gradually being completed. "It's impressive," said Sarah, observing the now expanded map on the library wall. Dozens of bright points marked the location of other sanctuaries, each connected by lines of energy that the Red Wolves had always known. Mr. William was just one of the guardians of a much larger system. Claire, who had become a constant presence in the mansion, worked with Emily in organizing a compendium that gathered knowledge from all the sanctuaries. "Each place has its own history, its own wisdom," she explained. But together they form something much greater. The guardians seemed more active than ever, moving among the visitors with renewed energy. The pup, now visibly more grown, was beginning to demonstrate behavior that suggested its true special nature. "See how it interacts with the crystals," Anthony pointed out during one of his observations. The young red wolf had developed the ability to activate the crystals with its presence, creating light patterns that communicated complex messages. Dr. James, returning from a series of meetings with representatives from other sanctuaries, brought encouraging news. The Blackwood Foundation is serving as a model for a national protection network. Other places are following our example, creating their own legal foundations. On a particularly significant afternoon, as the sun was setting over the property, something extraordinary happened. The crystals in all connected sanctuaries began to pulse in unison, creating a wave of energy that could be felt by all the guardians. "It's the awakening," Claire whispered, her eyes shining with emotion. "It's the moment, Mrs. Celeste predicted in her writings. The guardian gathered all the red wolves in the mansion's gardens, their melodious howls joining in a harmony that made the crystals vibrate even more intensely. It was a celebration, a moment of recognition for the work that had been accomplished. Emily, consulting William's latest writings, found a passage that seemed especially relevant. When all points reconnect again, when human guardians and red wolves re-establish their ancient alliance, a new cycle will begin. It's not the end of a journey, but the beginning of something much greater. Sarah, observing the scene in the gardens, felt a deep gratitude. "Mr. William knew," she said, her voice choked with emotion. "He knew that his legacy wasn't just about preserving the red wolves or protecting a sanctuary. It was about awakening something that was dormant in all of us." Night fell over Blackwood Manor, but the gardens remained illuminated by the glow of the crystals and the majestic presence of the red wolves. It was a new era beginning, one in which ancient mysteries and modern wisdom united in a common purpose. The pup, now clearly recognized as a future leader among the guardians, positioned itself beside the guardian, its young eyes carrying an ancient wisdom. Together, they represented the continuity of a legacy that transcended time, a legacy that was now safe in the hands of its new protectors. A year had passed since that first night at William Blackwood's wake, when a mysterious red wolf appeared to pay its last respects. Blackwood Manor, once a place of mystery and isolation, had transformed into a vibrant center of research and preservation. The gardens, now open to selected visitors, flourished with renewed energy. Researchers, environmentalists, and guardians from other sanctuaries circulated along the stone paths, exchanging knowledge and experiences. William's dream of uniting ancient wisdom with modern knowledge was being realized in ways that surpassed all expectations. Sarah, overseeing the mansion's activities, smiled as she watched a group of children being guided by Emily on an educational tour. "Red wolves are much more than endangered animals," she explained to the amazed young visitors. "They are guardians of ancient wisdom, teachers who help us reconnect with something we've forgotten." The guardian, always present, observed everything with its wise eyes. At its side, the pup, now a young red wolf, had assumed its own role in training new guardians. Together, they represented the continuity of a cycle that constantly renewed itself. Dr. James, returning from an international conference on environmental preservation, brought encouraging news. The model we've developed here is inspiring similar projects in other countries. The idea of combining environmental preservation with traditional wisdom is gaining worldwide recognition. Anthony, who had trained a new generation of trail guardians, shared his satisfaction. The ancient paths are more alive than ever. Each new guardian learns not only to protect the forest but to understand its language. Claire, who had become a vital bridge between the different sanctuaries, was organizing a national gathering of guardians. "It's incredible to see how each place has developed its own way of preserving ancestral knowledge," she commented. "And yet, we're all part of the same web." On a special afternoon, as the sun was setting over the property, the group gathered in the library for an intimate ceremony. It was the anniversary of the day when everything began, when a mysterious red wolf appeared at the wake to change their lives forever. Emily opened the diary where she recorded the contemporary history of the sanctuary. William Blackwood's legacy, she read, wasn't about a person, a place, or even a species. It was about recovering a lost connection, about remembering that we are all part of something greater. Sarah, looking out the window, saw new red wolves emerging from the forest. Each generation brings something new, she reflected. But the essence remains the same, ancient wisdom flowing through time, finding new guardians in each era. The guardian, as if understanding the significance of the moment, emitted a soft howl that was answered by all the red wolves in the region. The sound echoed through the valleys, carrying a message of hope and continuity. "Mr. William would be proud," said Anthony, his voice choked with emotion. "Not just for what we've preserved, but for what we've built together." And so, as night fell over Mystic Valley, the legacy continued. On ancient trails and new paths, in stories told and discoveries yet to come, the connection between humans and red wolves remained alive, a constant reminder that some mysteries don't need to be unraveled, only honored, protected, and passed on. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of William Blackwood's legacy and the mysterious red wolves has touched your hearts. To continue discovering unique stories that explore the deep connections between humans and nature, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Every day we bring you special narratives that remind us of the magic that exists in the world around us. Share your thoughts in the comments and join us on this journey of discovery and enchantment.